Imagine a kid, maybe like 7 years old.
Right. Right in that early elementary sweet spot.
Yeah, exactly. And at home, this kid is just an absolute chatterbox.
Oh, totally.
I mean, they're singing in the kitchen, they're talking your ear off about their day, narrating every single move their toys are making.
Asking a million questions right before bedtime.
Yes, they are vibrant and loud and just, full of life. But the exact second their foot touches the linoleum of their classroom, they go entirely silent.
Just completely shut down.
Completely. And we're not talking about a kid who is just, I don't know, a little shy or quiet for an afternoon.
No.
We are talking about a child who will not speak a single word for weeks, sometimes even months.
It's honestly a jarring contrast to witness.
It really is. So welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a stack of research and clinical notes to unpack a condition that is, frankly, profoundly misunderstood by the public.
And completely mishandled by the educational systems that are supposed to protect these kids.
Right. So we are looking at selective mutism and a really fascinating massive framework for school mental health support being rolled out right now.
Yeah, you have parents who see one child at home, and then teachers who see an entirely different, completely silent child at school.
Which has to be so confusing.
It is. And historically, the adults in the room have deeply misinterpreted what is happening in those silent moments. So we are going to break down the clinical reality of this, why the misdiagnosis happens so often, the exact evidence-based ways to treat it, and how an initiative called MentalSpace School is building out specialized infrastructure in Georgia to solve this problem from the ground up.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the core revelation from our source material today is that this behavior is almost never a phase.
Right. It is not a phase at all.
And it is certainly not a stubborn kid just digging their heels in, It's not them trying to be difficult or manipulative. What we are looking at is a highly specific, treatable condition.
That is the absolute foundation we have to start from here. Selective mutism is definitively an anxiety disorder.
An anxiety disorder, not a behavioral issue.
Exactly. It is explicitly not shyness. It is not defiance. When an adult looks at a silent child and labels them stubborn, they are assigning malicious intent.
Like the kid is doing it on purpose.
Right. They are assuming the child has the full capability to speak, but is consciously choosing to withhold their voice as some sort of power play.
Which is just so unfair to the kid.
It is. Because the clinical reality is the exact opposite.
Yeah, reading through these notes, it honestly just feels like a smartphone.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Think about your phone, right? When you are on your home Wi-Fi network, everything runs perfectly. The apps load, the microphone works, you can make all the calls you want.
Seamless.
Right. But the moment that phone connects to the school's network, a physical security firewall instantly disables the microphone. The hardware isn't broken at all.
The child desperately wants to speak.
Yes. They are practically mashing the unmute button in their brain over and over, but the anxiety acts as an impenetrable firewall, just blocking the physical ability to produce sound.
The firewall analogy works perfectly, but I think we can take it a step further.
Okay, how so?
It is a firewall that the child doesn't even have the password to. Their vocal cords are completely fine. Their language skills are fine.
But they just can't get past it.
Right. The fight, flight, or freeze response in their nervous system has essentially hardwired a freeze command directly to their ability to vocalize in that specific environment.
Wow. So it's a physiological response at that point.
Exactly. And to formally diagnose this, the source material gives us 3 strict clinical signs. First, there must be a consistent failure to speak in expected social situations, like the classroom.
So we aren't talking about a kid who just clammed up during, one really intimidating school assembly.
Right. It can't be a one-off. It has to be a consistent patterned failure. Second, the silence must last for more than a month.
Okay, so a month.
Yeah, we aren't talking about first week of school jitters here.
Yeah.
And third, it has to actively interfere with school functioning. It has to impact their ability to learn or socialize.
Which makes total sense. I mean, if you cannot speak, you can't ask to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
You can't tell the teacher that the kid next to you is kicking your desk. You can't participate in reading groups. You basically just become a ghost in your own classroom.
And what's fascinating here is that if a student speaks freely at home but never at school, even after an entire month has passed, we must completely divorce our minds from the concept of shyness.
Right, because shyness doesn't work like that.
Exactly. Shyness is a general personality trait. It is a baseline hesitance that usually applies everywhere they go.
A shy kid is shy at home, shy at the store, shy at school.
Right. It does not feature this extreme binary toggle between a loud, articulate child at home and total absolute mutism at school. This is a severe anxiety response.
But confusing an anxiety disorder with a personality trait leads us right into a major danger zone, which the notes heavily emphasize. They call it the misdiagnosis trap.
It's a huge problem.
Yeah, and the text points out that this condition is frequently misclassified as introversion. But there is another really common misclassification mentioned that I want to dig into: English language learner adjustment, or ELL.
Oh, this is a massive systemic blind spot across the country.
I have to stop you there, though, and push back on this a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
Put yourself in the shoes of a second-grade teacher. You have a brand new student who just moved here, and they are an English language learner.
Right.
They're navigating a totally new culture, a completely new building, and a language they are still actively trying to decode in their head. And you already have 29 other kids in the room.
It's a lot to manage.
It is.
Yeah.
So how can you, as an educator, accurately tell if this student is just quietly adjusting to the massive cognitive load of a new language, or if they're actually suffering from an anxiety disorder like selective mutism? Because from the outside looking in, a silent ELL student and a student with selective mutism look identical.
It is an incredibly fair question. The cognitive load of language acquisition is heavy, and it's exactly why educators need diagnostic frameworks to lean on, rather than just going by their gut feeling.
Right.
To answer it, we have to rely on the specific rules provided in the source text, primarily the 1-month rule and the home versus school contrast.
So how does a month clarify things? I mean, learning English takes way longer than a month.
It does, but a month is roughly the timeline it takes for a child's nervous system to establish a baseline in a new environment.
Oh, okay.
It is entirely developmentally appropriate for an ELL student to have a silent period when they first enter a new language environment. They are absorbing the rhythm, the vocabulary, the expectation.
It's just taking it all in.
Exactly. But if that absolute silence persists well past 4 to 6 weeks, the red flag should start going up. The definitive test, however, is the home versus school contrast.
Okay, so the teacher has to actually coordinate with the parents.
They must. If a school consults with the parents and finds out that this child speaks comfortably, loudly, and fluently at home, even if it's exclusively in their native language, but they freeze entirely and will not speak even in their native language when they are on school grounds.
Wow.
Yeah, then you are not looking at a language acquisition issue. The language isn't the problem. The environment is the trigger. You are looking at an anxiety disorder.
Oh, that makes so much sense. It goes right back to the firewall.
Yes, exactly.
If a kid who speaks fluent Spanish at home won't even whisper a word of Spanish to another Spanish-speaking kid in the cafeteria, the school building itself is the firewall, not the vocabulary.
And distinguishing that quickly is vital because of the timeline. The source emphasizes that there is a ticking clock on this.
Yeah, the notes mention that.
The optimal window for highly effective intervention is in early elementary school.
The text mentions that the longer selective mutism is left untreated, the more entrenched it becomes.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, think about neuroplasticity and how the brain builds habits. If a child spends kindergarten, first grade, and second grade learning that the school building is a place of absolute paralyzing silence, their brain hardwires that association.
It just becomes their normal.
Exactly. The silence morphs from a temporary anxiety response into a deeply entrenched structural coping mechanism. Waiting for the child to just grow out of it actively makes the condition harder to treat.
Wow.
You are giving the concrete more time to set. The child starts to internalize it as their identity. They become the silent kid, and breaking out of that identity becomes terrifying.
Okay, so the concrete is setting, the firewall is up, the kid is trapped in this identity. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yes.
How do we actually treat this? How do we tear down the firewall without traumatizing the kid? Because I am assuming that just pulling them to the front of the room and yelling, "Speak," isn't going to fix an anxiety disorder.
Doing that will absolutely make it worse. It will reinforce the anxiety.
Right, that sounds like a nightmare.
It is. The source material outlines a very specific, evidence-based treatment protocol. It heavily relies on cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, combined with gradual exposure.
Okay.
It also mandates parent and teacher coaching, and a clinical technique called structured stimulus fading.
Structured stimulus fading, reading through the notes on how that actually works, it honestly just sounds like a dimmer switch.
A dimmer switch.
Yeah. You don't walk into a pitch black room and instantly blast the floodlights.
Oh, right.
If you have a kid with profound anxiety about speaking, the heavy breaker switch approach is forcing them to stand up in front of the class and read a paragraph out loud on day one.
Which is terrifying.
Exactly. That just floods their nervous system. You blow the fuse, the anxiety wins.
So how does the dimmer switch work in this context?
You just turn the dial up a millimeter a day. You start with the absolute lowest stakes scenario possible. Maybe the child and the therapist are in an empty room, and the child just has to point to a picture to answer a question.
0 speaking required.
0. Then a week later, they turn the dimmer switch up a tiny bit. Maybe the child has to make a sound, like humming or tapping.
Right.
A week after that, they whisper a single vowel sound to a parent. Then they whisper a word to the teacher while the other kids are at recess. You are gradually introducing the speaking stimulus while slowly fading out the anxiety triggers, step by microscopic step.
That is an excellent visualization of how it operates in clinical practice. The dimmer switch allows the child's nervous system to gradually acclimate to the exposure without ever triggering that massive fight, flight, or freeze response.
Right, you keep them under the threshold.
You are tricking the brain into feeling safe. But the source material is very explicit about a crucial requirement here. This must be diagnosed and managed by a licensed clinician.
Right, this is highly technical. It's not a DIY project for a well-meaning homeroom teacher who read an article about it online.
It cannot be. It requires tightly coordinated daily efforts between the clinical professional, the parents at home, and the teachers in the building.
Which is a lot of moving parts.
It is. Think about how fragile that dimmer switch process is. If the clinician spends 4 weeks slowly turning the dial up a millimeter at a time, getting the child comfortable enough to whisper.
Yeah.
But then a substitute teacher walks into the room one Tuesday, doesn't know the protocol, and accidentally flips the heavy breaker switch by loudly demanding the child answer a math question in front of 30 peers.
Oh, no.
The progress is instantly shattered. The firewall slams back down. It takes highly specialized professional guidance to map out that gradual exposure and protect the environment while it happens.
But logically, that leads us to a massive brick wall.
The logistics.
Right. If successful treatment requires that level of tight daily coordination between a specialized clinical therapist, the parents, and the teacher, how do schools actually manage the logistics of that?
It's incredibly difficult.
I mean, you can't child-proof a school environment for this unless the therapist is literally talking to the teachers on a regular basis. And teachers are already overworked. School counselors are stretched impossibly thin, dealing with hundreds of kids at a time.
It is the ultimate bottleneck. That logistical gap is what prevents so many children from getting the help they actually need. The infrastructure to support that level of cross-communication simply hasn't existed in most public school systems.
Which perfectly introduces the systemic solution from our source material.
Yes.
The text brings up an organization called MentalSpace School. They are an organization providing K-12 mental health support, specifically designed for schools in Georgia. And looking at their model, it seems entirely built to solve this exact logistical nightmare.
The scale of what they are attempting is quite remarkable. We aren't talking about a generic 1-800 hotline that a school guidance counselor can hand to a frustrated parent.
Right, it's way more involved.
MentalSpace School provides dedicated therapist teams per school.
Dedicated teams per school. Not just a roaming consultant who drops in once a month.
Dedicated teams. And they offer same-day teletherapy access.
Yeah.
But the crucial piece, especially for something as fragile as treating selective mutism, is that they coordinate directly with the Georgia schools.
That's huge.
They are intentionally bridging that gap. The therapist isn't just treating the child in an isolated office on a Saturday. They are working actively with the classroom teacher to manage the school side of the treatment.
So they are in the loop.
Yes. They're the ones helping the teacher operate that dimmer switch in real time.
That is massive. And looking at the source text, their mandate goes way beyond just selective mutism.
Oh, absolutely.
If you have a dedicated therapist team integrated into a school, you can handle so much more. They are providing crisis intervention, suicide and violence prevention, family counseling, and even staff wellness programs for the teachers themselves.
Which teachers desperately need.
Exactly. It is a complete ecosystem of mental health support.
This raises an important question, though.
Okay, what's that?
Anytime you integrate private medical and psychological care so deeply into a public, government-run school system, you run into an absolute labyrinth of privacy laws and legal requirements.
Oh, the red tape has to be miles long.
It is a legal minefield. We throw around acronyms like HIPAA and FERPA all the time, but let's actually look at what that means.
Break it down for us.
So FERPA is the federal law that protects a student's educational records, their report cards, their disciplinary history.
Hmm.
HIPAA is the law that protects their medical and therapeutic charts.
Right.
When a licensed therapist is actively talking to a second-grade math teacher about a student's treatment plan, you are crossing those streams.
Which usually means someone is getting sued.
Exactly. But the source text addresses this directly, noting that MentalSpace School is fully HIPAA and FERPA compliant. They have built the secure infrastructure to allow that communication without violating federal privacy laws.
And there was another legal mandate mentioned in the notes, something called HB 268, with a looming deadline of July 2026.
Yes. HB 268 is a specific Georgia mandate requiring schools to have structured, robust mental health action plans in place. It is a major regulatory hurdle approaching very quickly. By integrating a fully compliant system like MentalSpace School right now, these districts are not just getting the clinical support they desperately need. They are outsourcing the incredibly complex burden of meeting that July 2026 legal mandate.
That is a massive weight off the district's shoulders.
And even if you, listening right now, don't live in Georgia, watching how they navigate this is fascinating. Because as the youth mental health crisis continues, this is the exact blueprint other states are going to have to adopt when the reality finally forces their hand.
Okay, so we have this beautiful, legally compliant, highly specialized system. We have the exact evidence-based treatments needed. So what does this all mean?
Yeah.
Honestly, as I was reading this, my immediate thought was, this is a great blueprint, but specialized therapy means absolutely nothing if everyday families can't afford to actually access it.
Access is the great filter in all of healthcare, but especially mental health. You can design the best cognitive behavioral protocol in the world, but if it costs $200 an hour out of pocket, it might as well not exist for the vast majority of public school students.
And that is where the accessibility details in this source text are genuinely staggering. First off, on the personnel side, MentalSpace provides licensed, diverse therapists who are culturally competent.
Which is huge.
Yeah. Linking back to our English language learner discussion, it's vital. You need therapists who understand the cultural context, the family dynamics, and the linguistic background of the kids they're treating.
And on the financial side, they have completely dismantled the traditional barriers to entry. Let's look at the insurance data provided in the text.
Okay.
For families on state assistance, the Medicaid copay for this specialized same-day teletherapy is exactly $0.
$0, which is instantly life-changing for lower-income families.
Absolutely life-changing.
But the text also lists a massive web of insurance providers they are in network with. It's everything from state Medicaid to private corporate networks. Things like BCBS, Cigna, Aetna, UHC, Humana, Peach State, CareSource, and Amerigroup.
That breadth of coverage is highly intentional.
How so?
Because to fix a school environment, you can't just treat the handful of kids whose parents have fantastic corporate tech job insurance. You have to treat the whole ecosystem.
Right. Everyone has to have access.
By being in network with almost everyone, they ensure that whether a family is on state assistance or private employer-sponsored insurance, the financial friction is either eliminated entirely or drastically reduced.
And the proof that this massive statewide model works isn't just theoretical. The source text gives us the actual outcome statistics, and they are incredible.
The numbers are really strong.
They report 89% improved attendance, 92% reduced anxiety, and an 85% family satisfaction rate.
If we really analyze those numbers, they tell a profound story. That 89% improved attendance isn't just a nice mental health statistic. That is a structural, economic, educational statistic.
Because these kids are actually showing up.
Right. Think about a child with untreated selective mutism. Eventually, the anxiety of going to a building where you physically cannot speak becomes so overwhelming that the child simply stops going.
Oh, wow.
School refusal sets in. They become chronically absent.
They just completely drop out of the system.
Exactly. So when MentalSpace School reports 89% improved attendance, it proves that when you remove the clinical barriers, by offering same-day teletherapy and direct coordination with the teachers, you aren't just managing a child's anxiety in the background so they feel a little better.
Right.
You're actively resolving the entrenched psychological issues that physically keep kids out of the classroom. You are taking a kid who was going to drop out of society, and you are putting them back at a desk learning algebra.
That is just incredible.
And that 92% reduction in anxiety proves that the dimmer switch approach, when properly protected by the school ecosystem, successfully dismantles that firewall.
It really is a complete paradigm shift. We have covered so much vital ground today. For everyone listening, we have gone from fundamentally redefining a child's silence. We've taken it out of the unfair box of stubbornness or defiance and correctly identified it as a specific, paralyzing anxiety disorder.
We've explored how targeted, structured cognitive behavioral therapy and stimulus fading can slowly trick the nervous system into feeling safe, rebuilding a child's ability to communicate.
And we've seen how comprehensive statewide support systems, like what MentalSpace School is doing right now down in Georgia, can remove the massive logistical, legal, and financial barriers to actually deliver that therapy and entirely rewrite a child's future. It's truly incredible work.
It is.
If you want to follow up on the source material we covered today, or if you want to learn more about the infrastructure they are building for schools, you can visit mentalspaceschool.com or reach out to them directly by contacting MentalSpace School at chiaseverp.com.
The clinical approaches and the data we've unpacked today are undeniably powerful for the children they serve. But the source material also leaves us with a much broader psychological principle.
Oh.
Yeah, it shows us that the looks like defiance, or what we so easily write off as a difficult personality trait in a child, is very often a loud, hidden cry for structured help. The anxiety is the firewall, not their character.
I love that. The anxiety is the firewall, not their character.
And I think that leaves you with a profound question to mull over as you go about your week.
Okay, let's hear it.
If we take this exact clinical lens and apply it to the adult world, to our own workplaces, our own families, our own relationships, how many stubborn, difficult, or withdrawn people are you interacting with every day who are actually just trapped by their own entrenched anxiety? And how many of them are simply waiting for the right kind of empathetic, structured stimulus fading to finally find their voice?